morning, and thank you for watching Live Impact News here on 13 News Now Plus. My name is Eugene Daniel. I'm joined with my producer, Sarah Calloway, here in our streaming studio. Normally, I don't have on the full suit and tie, but I just literally walked in here in the moment as we have a lot of things happening right now. Very busy day for our lawmakers in the nation as they are set to tackle health care and those extending whether or not to extend the expiring Affordable Care Act tax subsidies that are currently set to go out at the end of this month. And so we know that that is taking place right now as we take a live look on the Senate floor. But also right now we are looking at a hearing taking place into National Guard deployments across the country. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start there and see what they are talking about when it comes to this hearing, and we're going to continue to monitor what's going on from the Senate floor.
So clear. Public safety is at risk in our cities, and we are in need of well-supported and effective law enforcement. This situation was made all the worse during the Biden administration. We saw widespread efforts by Democrats to defund the police. These moves constricted law enforcement effectiveness across the nation. For one example, consider Seattle in 2020. Hundreds of violent protesters took over several downtown blocks. They declared it a police-free zone and demanded that the police budget be cut in half. And apparently it did become a police-free zone. In the absence of all police presence, violence, open drug usage, and shootings escalated. All the while, the city's elected officials did little to stop the chaos. This is but one example of what happens without sufficient law and order. Now, I would be remiss at this time if I did not recognize that in trying to restore that law and order, there are costs. In particular, I'm reminded of the 2 West Virginia National Guard members who were shot in this city just before the Thanksgiving holiday. Today, we remember Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, who lost her life, and we grieve with her loved ones. Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf remains hospitalized, but is showing signs of progress, and we likewise pray for his swift recovery. The public sees these examples of crime in their communities, and they expect more from their government. They demand and deserve action. For this reason, President Trump ordered an immediate and coordinated response by deploying the National Guard to some of our nation's most dangerous cities. These strategic deployments are not only appropriate but essential. Current crime rates in our largest cities have become a substantial burden on local and federal law enforcement agencies. Increasingly, these agencies are unable to keep our communities safe. They are underfunded and stretched thin, unable to reinstitute law and order on their own. The Guard is uniquely suited to assist with the fight against crime. It can provide manpower, resources, and specialized expertise that local police departments may lack. Additionally, National Guard units are trained for rapid deployment. They're versatile, able to handle large-scale public safety operations and provide immediate relief to communities in need. In fact, the National Guard has a strong history of assisting in domestic law enforcement during times of national crisis. Their expertise in crowd control, search and rescue operations, and logistical support makes them well-suited for urban environments struggling with crime-related violence. Not surprisingly, Democratic governors and left-wing pundits have decried these deployments. They've raised concerns about violations of the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits the use of military for domestic policing, except in specific circumstances. Others have said these deployments waste money and reduce troop readiness. These concerns are both manufactured and misguided, in my judgment. Mobilizing the Guard is an excellent opportunity for units to enhance cohesion, complete mission essential tasks, and ensure training is complete. Moreover, Guardsmen operate with the highest degree of professionalism. They serve purely in support roles, never crossing the line into law enforcement functions. They are limited to protecting federal employees and federal buildings, providing logistics and communications to law enforcement operations, and most importantly, to providing a visible security presence, which supports law enforcement and deters crime. Furthermore, all National Guardsmen serving in our cities operate under the standing rules of the use of force. These rules prohibit the use of force except in instances of self-defense. All Guardsmen receive extensive training on these rules. I'm confident in their ability to operate within them. I'm proud of the Guardsmen serving in our nation's capital and in cities throughout America. I thank them for their service and sacrifice and for their commitment to restoring law and order. Every day they help Americans feel safe in their communities. With that, I turn to my colleague, Senator Duckworth. And Senator Duckworth, I hope your voice is in better shape than mine this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and also thank you to Ranking Member Reed, again, Chairman Wicker, and Leader Thune for working with me to hold this meeting. I first want to acknowledge the horrific shooting in D.C., as the Chairman has already acknowledged, resulting in the tragic death of Specialist Sarah Beckstrom and injury of Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf. These heroes served with honor and showed up to do the mission despite the risks, as our service members always do. It is a tragedy that never should have happened in the first place. That is exactly why I led my colleagues to push for this hearing. Military service involves risks, and our service members accept those risks knowingly, selflessly. So we better be damn sure that the mission is the right one. That is clear, that it is a clear and effective mission, that it serves our national security. If we stand by while this administration pursues another irresponsible, open-ended campaign with no defined mission, no clear authorities, no set timeline, and no transparent end state, we fail our troops. We fail their families, and we fail the American people. Today, we must shine a light on the cost of these domestic deployments to the American people and to those who wear the uniform of this great nation. I look forward to getting answers about where this administration's crusade of misusing the military in American cities is going, and hearing how anyone can justify the damage it is doing to our service members, to civil rights, our public trust in the military, and our service members' ability to execute their critical war-fighting missions. Look, one of the proudest moments in my life was when the first time I ever raised my hand to swear my oath to the Constitution as a member of the Illinois Army National Guard. I cherished every single day that I got to call myself a soldier. And it's because I love our military so deeply that I refuse to let anyone, including the president, abuse it for their own gain. Right now, thousands of troops are deployed across the country under false pretenses. Here in D.C., the National Guard has been performing missions that don't help with their military training, like spreading mulch and picking up trash, but that, as we have sadly seen, nonetheless carry risk for our service members. Let me be clear, safety in our community is paramount. But these deployments do not make our streets safer. They do not keep our families more secure. In fact, it is just the opposite. Instead, President Trump has taken our troops away from their core mission just to do his personal bidding, forcing them to patrol tourist areas in D.C. or invade a city where residents are peacefully protesting his inhumane policies. We know Trump's actions are not about so-called law and order. If he cared about law and order, he wouldn't have quite literally defunded our police by freezing and slashing federal dollars that help to hire, train, and equip law enforcement. If this administration cared about law and order, it would not be ignoring the growing number of judges, including those appointed by Trump himself, who've deemed these deployments illegal. In Illinois, a judge from the Northern District found that DHS's account of the situation on the ground, and I quote, was simply unreliable, end quote. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, in a 3-judge panel that featured 2 Republican-appointed judges, including a Trump appointee, upheld this view that, and I quote, the facts do not justify the president's action, end quote. These judges went further, explaining that political opposition is not rebellion, and reaffirming that First Amendment activity in Illinois is not the sort of threat that would justify a military deployment. Similarly, another Trump-appointed federal judge, this time in Oregon, wrote that the administration had no credible evidence that the protests had gotten out of control and that the president's basis for deploying the Guard was untethered to the facts. Our troops deserve to know why they are being asked to do such legally unprecedented and deeply unpopular things on American soil. And make no mistake, this is deeply unpopular. Most Americans don't want this. Poll after poll has found that a majority of Americans oppose deploying troops for missions that should be handled by law enforcement. This all raises a core question for our hearing today. Why is this administration so focused on turning our military against Americans here at home? Our military's #1 priority must be readiness. We face real growing threats from China, Russia, Iran, and more bad actors on a global stage. The Department of Defense needs to be laser focused on preparing our troops to defend America's interests abroad, not performing tasks that are meant to be done by civilian law enforcement here at home. No one else can do the critical work of keeping our families safe from these actual threats. And our troops are already stretched thin for time and resources, yet these deployments are burning priceless readiness, morale, and resources on open-ended, unjustified missions. So far, this administration is estimated to have spent over $341.3 million on the deployments to Illinois, LA, Oregon, DC, and Memphis alone, not including the cost of thousands of troops along the border. But these costs are tabulated in more than taxpayer dollars and cannot be overstated, nor can the risk that comes with politicizing our troops for one man's gain. So let me close with this. Enabling the president, any president, to send military troops into American cities under transparently flimsy pretexts to meet his whims will have a dangerous and profoundly damaging impact on our nation's military. Our heroes did not sign up for this. They signed up to defend Americans' rights to free speech, not to intimidate Americans from exercising that right. They were willing to die to defend this country, not to defend one man's partisan agenda. We cannot stay silent as our troops' willingness to sacrifice is abused, or as President Trump erodes the hard-won trust our military has earned from the American public. Because while our armed forces have a sacred role in our country, public trust can be easily lost when the Commander-in-Chief uses them so recklessly, especially when that Commander-in-Chief has already gone so far as to suggest that the military uses American cities as, and I quote, training grounds for, again, I quote the President, the war within. Look, these days, I may no longer be wearing my Army uniform, but it is still hanging up in my closet. But as a senator and as a member of this committee, my core mission remains the same as when I was in the National Guard, to keep America as strong and as safe as she should be. The power to deploy our troops domestically must remain exceptional, accountable, and rooted in law, not in one man's judgment about what constitutes disorder. That's why I'm here today. That's why I'm so outraged. That is why I am so determined to make sure that, for the sake of our troops, we get some answers today. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Let me observe that my Air Force uniform is also hanging up in my closet, but there's no way I could get into it at this point. Let me just mention for the purposes of our audience that these three witnesses were chosen by the leadership of this committee by consensus, and we welcome them here today. Mr. Ditlevson, your opening statement, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the Department of War's role in supporting Homeland Defense, particularly regarding the mobilization of the National Guard. As the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of War for Homeland Defense and America's Security Affairs, I oversee the policies and plans related to these missions, and I welcome the opportunity to brief you today. The Trump administration has taken every available opportunity to restore law and order in the United States. To that end, the department has reinvested in its relationship with our federal, state, and local partners to strengthen safety within our country. Americans must know that they can walk home at night, that they can take their children to the playground, that they can exist without fear of being attacked. President Trump promised law and order, and through his fearless leadership, he is delivering. Promises made, promises kept. The Department of War, and specifically the National Guard, plays a crucial role in responding to a variety of domestic challenges, from protecting federal facilities and personnel to supporting law enforcement and disaster relief efforts. The importance of the National Guard in this mission comes straight from the top. Secretary Hegseth, a decorated former member of the DC National Guard, is ardent and steadfast in the critical role the National Guard plays in supporting law enforcement and keeping the American people safe. Our efforts are guided by a comprehensive legal and policy framework undergirded, most importantly, by the Constitution of the United States. We prioritize strict adherence to legal parameters in all of our activities while faithfully executing the President and Secretary's direction. To do otherwise would jeopardize good order and discipline and would be dangerous and irresponsible. Recent executive orders and presidential memorandums have directed DOW to provide specific support in several key areas. Currently, the National Guard is deployed in several states under both Title X and Title 32 authorities, providing support for a diverse set of missions, including federal protection missions in California, Illinois, and Oregon, support to federal law enforcement in Tennessee, and restoring law and order in our nation's capital. We are committed to ensuring that all National Guard personnel are properly trained and equipped for these missions. Every single service member undergoes specialized training before being entrusted with the duty to protect American citizens. We emphasize de-escalation techniques, respect for civil liberties, and adherence to the rules for the use of force. We also work closely with state governments and other federal agencies to ensure a coordinated and effective response to domestic challenges. The Department of War understands the concerns surrounding the use of National Guard in domestic operations. We are committed to transparency and accountability in all of our activities. We strive to balance readiness for both domestic and overseas missions, adapting our training and resourcing to meet evolving needs. My office is committed to ensuring that these resources are used effectively and responsibly, as we have throughout President Trump's time in office. Thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to answering the committee's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ditlevson. Mr. Young, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of this committee, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today on the important topic of National Guard mobilizations. The overarching concern in all of our National Guard deployments is to ensure that our communities remain safe places where our citizens can enjoy their constitutionally protected rights in peace, and where federal officers can perform their valid federal functions without fear of being physically harmed. When the Department of War receives a presidential mobilization order, Supreme Court precedents requires that we presume that he exercised his statutory and constitutional authorities as the Commander-in-Chief in a manner consistent with the law. These lawful orders, given in exigent circumstances, requires the Department of War to rapidly muster a response to prevent loss of life of limb and property in emergency situations. The Department issues carefully tailored guidance to commanders and mobilized National Guard personnel, focusing their mission on the protection of federal functions, personnel, and property. In doing so, the Department has operated well within the law established by longstanding Supreme Court precedent and longstanding Department of Justice legal opinions. The Department of War has also received, evaluated, and responded to numerous requests for assistance from the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice under well-established statutory frameworks for assisting other federal agencies in performing their federal functions and in assisting state and local law enforcement authorities. The dedicated women of our National Guard have selflessly stepped forward to heed the call of duty and have served our nation with distinction. From all reports, they are well received by the citizens they serve and have comported themselves in an exemplary manner. As a result of their service, our communities are safer. Our federal law enforcement officers can more safely perform their legal functions, and obstructions to the proper execution of federal laws are being removed. I look forward to answering your questions.
Well, thank you very, very much. And now, General Guillot, you are welcome here and recognized for your opening statement.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and the distinguished members of the committee. I thank you for the opportunity to appear today alongside Mr. Ditlevson and Mr. Young regarding the deployments of the National Guard in Title X status within the United States. I'd like to start by acknowledging the essential role of the Army and Air National Guard teammates play in defending the homeland every day. Right now, Guardsmen under the command and control of NORAD and U.S. NORTHCOM are defending against ballistic missile threats, protecting national airspace, supporting federal law enforcement, and helping seal and repel illegal activity at the southern border. In fact, there isn't a single NORAD or U.S. NORTHCOM mission that doesn't rely on our National Guard teammates. I'll center my comments this morning on United States Northern Command's roles and responsibilities in commanding and controlling Title X forces conducting the Federal Protection Mission in support of federal law enforcement agencies. At the direction of the President and the Secretary of War, Army National Guard personnel operating in Title X status are tasked with protecting federal functions, which includes property, entities, and federal personnel performing federal functions, including enforcement of federal law in California, Oregon, and Illinois. There are also currently 200 National Guard personnel in Title X status at Fort Bliss, Texas, who are available for this mission if necessary. The assigned forces in all 4 locations operate under the command and control of U.S. NORTHCOM while reporting to U.S. Army North. This provides a unified command structure that ensures disciplined execution of the assigned missions and clear accountability. Accountability and adherence to all applicable laws and policies are critical, and U.S. NORTHCOM will continue to comply with all laws, regulations, and applicable court orders. In adherence with federal court rulings, personnel in Oregon and Illinois remain federalized on Title X status, but are not executing the Federal Protection Operational Mission. Meanwhile, 100 service members in California in Title X status are executing the Federal Protection Mission in accordance with a stay issued by the Ninth Circuit as litigation continues to progress. NORTHCOM is in coordination with the Department regarding the order issued yesterday by the District Court in California. From the outset, I've directed that every service member participating in federal protection missions be thoroughly trained on their authorities and limitations. It is essential that everyone involved in this mission understands precisely what they are authorized to do, but perhaps more importantly, what they are authorized not to do. To be clear, Title X forces are prohibited from conducting traditional law enforcement activities, including arrest, seizure, search, or evidence collection in connection with the enforcement of laws. Their mission is to take reasonable measures to protect the destruction or defacement of federal government property, including preventing civilians from attacking federal facilities, stopping ongoing interference with federal functions by civilians, or preventing civilians with a demonstrated intent to interfere with the federal functions from such interference. The mission also includes protecting federal personnel from harm or threat of death or bodily injury. As such, service members may temporarily restrain civilians, conduct cursory searches, or take other similar measures to ensure safety of the persons on the property. To date, only 1 civilian has been temporarily detained by military personnel. That occurred on June 13th when, despite verbal warnings, an individual crossed a clearly marked boundary surrounding the Wilshire Federal Building in Los Angeles. In accordance with applicable law and policies, that individual was only detained until they could be handed over to proper law enforcement personnel. Title X forces are present to protect federal property and federal personnel in the execution of their responsibility to enforce federal law, not to replace them. Local, state, and federal law enforcement remain fully responsible for public safety and policing, while the objectives of the military professionals performing this mission are safety and continuity of the federal functions, and, if necessary, de-escalation, not confrontation. I met a young Marine in Los Angeles this summer, and when I asked him to describe his assigned mission, he told me that it was to ensure that the American citizens exercising their right to peaceful assembly and protest were able to do so safely. I think that sums up both the mission and the professionalism of the service members assigned to this mission very well. The Federal Protection Mission is an example of the Department's unique capability to support partners during extraordinary circumstances. NORAD and U.S. NORTHCOM are proud of the command's ability to rapidly deploy trained, disciplined forces when and wherever they're needed, and the well-trained, professional, and ready National Guard is crucial to that effort. Again, I would like to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, General, and I think I'll start with you. specifically, why bring the Guard in? What does it offer that law enforcement and other federal agencies cannot do?
First and foremost, Chairman, they are extremely disciplined, and they can very quickly be trained to conduct any mission that we task of them. When they come in, we train them on what they're authorized to do, which is rooted in the Mayday opinion and their 12406 authorities, and also the Secretary's directive action, which is to prevent destruction and defacement of the federal facilities and to protect the execution of federal functions. They can do that because they're disciplined, they're well-trained, and they very well understand the limits of their authorities.
Well, what are the benefits to the Guard? My first question was the benefits to the community and what they could bring, but what about the individuals that are being deployed, or do they benefit from this also?
Yes, sir, they do. We work very closely with the tags from each state to ensure that the training they receive not only benefits them in their federal function that they're performing for us, but also in their state role. So in the conduct of the mission, they get not only training on the standing for the rules of use of force, and also the civil disturbance operations that they could potentially execute, but they get small unit training, they get all of their medical training complete, they get all of their weapons qualifications and many other small unit tactics that benefit them in both statuses. Also, at this time, the majority of those serving in this role are volunteers, so it helps them in their pursuit of a career. And then it also allows us to trade out people who are assigned but maybe have school or other functions to ensure that the people that are serving not only are very good at their job, but they want to be there, and they're there on voluntary status.
Mr. Young, you're the counsel in this panel. Tell us what the Posse Comitatus Act is and how this deployment, this type of deployment we're talking about today, does not violate the Posse Comitatus.
Thank you, Senator. The Posse Comitatus Act was an act that was passed not long after the Civil War that addressed concerns regarding the use of federal troops in conducting domestic law enforcement. Up to that point in our nation's history, there had been a long practice of using federalized troops domestically, and so Congress, in order to make sure that local officials were not able to gain the support or the use of federal troops in dealing with local circumstances, passed the Posse Comitatus Act. It essentially precludes the department and military personnel from being used in a manner that would pervade the local law enforcement and that would subject civilians to direct military authority. And over the course of time, the Department of Justice has analyzed that rule in relation to National Guard deployments. For the vast majority of National Guard deployments, they are considered to be non-federalized. Most of the time that the National Guard is used, they are used under the control, direction, and authority of their governors, and they are in either what is called a state active duty status, or they are in a federally funded but state-controlled status, which is otherwise called Title 32. In both of those circumstances, they are considered to be non-federalized. They're also considered to not be part of the Army. And while that is an important legal distinction, because therefore the Posse Comitatus Act prohibits any part of the Army from being used domestically, and therefore non-federalized National Guard have long been used to be able to conduct domestic law enforcement operations. And there's a very long-standing and consistent practice of using non-federalized National Guard, such as what's here in the district today and what's in Memphis as well today, are in Title 32. The other aspect is the authority of the President as the Article II authority to ensure that the laws are faithfully executed and to protect the sovereign to be able to use federal forces, whether it be active component troops or whether it be National Guard personnel, to protect federal functions and property.
So just to nail this down, there are federal case law precedents that cause you to believe that what is being done currently is in accordance with federal law.
That's right, Senator, as well as long-established Department of Justice legal opinions that say that when federal functions and property are at jeopardy, the Posse Comitatus Act does not limit the president's ability to be able to protect those functions.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, you were just listening to a hearing that is taking place right now on National Guard troop deployments, which we have seen, as you just heard and reminded there, in Memphis, New Orleans, Washington, D.C., Chicago. And they have been a source of controversy for many Americans across the country as they have been sent into these communities, in large part for immigration forces and also in support of immigration enforcement, and also for crime, is what we have been told by the Trump administration. But that is happening. We're going to continue to stay on task with that. But right now, we are still watching this major conversation taking place on the Senate floor when it comes to your health care. Will lawmakers decide to extend the Affordable Care Act tax subsidies, or will those expire by the end of the year? Today, we're looking at dueling two different proposals, one by Republicans, one by Democrats, very different when it comes to how to deal with this issue of those expiring tax subsidies. And we just heard from Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer, and then also on the Republican side, the Republican leader John Thune. So we're going to go ahead and play those shots back to back here so you can hear their position, and then we'll come back into this discussion live on the floor.
The Democratic leader.
I ask unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, today is D-Day, Decision Day for Republican senators. Will Republicans side today with the American people and avert the impending health care crisis, or will they abandon American families as premiums shoot through the roof on January 1st? That is the decision Senate Republicans must make today. I say to my Republican colleagues, our bill is the last train to leave the station. After wasting precious time fighting among themselves, Republicans have one last shot at a clean, realistic plan to lower health care premiums. The Democratic bill is the only bill that will do that today. Ours is the only bill on either side in the House and Senate that has the full support of every member on our side of the aisle. Democrats are fighting to lower health care costs for the American people, while Republicans are fighting among themselves. By my last count, Republicans are now at 9 different health care proposals and counting, and none of them give the American people the one thing they most want: a clean, simple extension of these health care tax credits. But our bill does extend these credits cleanly and simply, and it's time for Republicans to join us. So I repeat, our bill is the last train to leave the station. After this, we'll not have time to try again before premiums shoot through the roof next year. This is not a political fight. This is not a symbolic vote. This is a life and death vote, because people who will lose their health care could face that horrible, horrible end. This is about ensuring that working and middle-class people can afford to see a doctor without going broke, to afford a treatment for illnesses like cancer, and enjoy the dignity of good health without wiping out their life savings. For many Americans, affording health insurance is the difference between life and death, as I've said. So we must act. People are counting on us. The American people are counting on us. counting on you, Republican senators, to act. Now, of course, this morning, the Senate will first vote on the Republican health care proposal. But the Republican plan is nothing more than a reflection of the deep divisions inside the Republican caucus and the Republican Party. Republicans have had so many differences amongst themselves that for a while it looked like they weren't going to put up a bill at all. But after that became too embarrassing an option for Republicans, they used Scotch tape and glue to come up with this ridiculous proposal that can't be taken seriously and does nothing to avoid the impending health care crisis. It doesn't extend the ACA tax credits for a day, a month, a year, none of that, not even a day. Even calling this Republican bill a proposal is generous, because the Republican bill is little more than junk insurance. It is no real plan at all. It's been repudiated time and time again in the past, and will be repudiated by the American people again. Under the Republican plan, the big idea is essentially to hand people about $80 a month and wish them good luck. And even to qualify for that check, listen to how bad this is. Americans would be forced onto bare-bone bronze plans with sky-high deductibles, $7,000 or $10,000 for an individual, tens of thousands for a couple. So to get that $80 a month, you're going to pay $7,000 off the top before you even get any health insurance. How ridiculous, how stingy, and how mean and cruel to the American people. What Republicans offer is not a health care plan. The Republican plan is a when you get sick, you go broke plan. And you know, it's sad the Senate even got to this place to begin with. Republicans in the Senate should have solved this problem months ago. Democrats warned this crisis was coming. We gave Republicans more than 3 chances to extend the tax credits this year, in the spring, the summer, and the fall, and every time, Republicans said no. Instead of lowering premiums, Republicans chose instead to axe health care funding, kick millions off insurance, close rural hospitals, all the while ripping away nutrition funding for working people. Why? So they could give their billionaire buddies a tax break. And now, after so much delay, Republicans are about to let the clock hit midnight. So there's only one option left to avoid falling over this health care cliff that Republicans have brought us to: a clean, simple, direct extension of the current ACA credits. Every single Democrat is unified behind this proposal. I urge Republicans to drop their divisions and join us. Republicans, join us and let's avert a disaster. Join us and let's lower costs for the American people. We have one shot to get this right. Republicans, join us. The American people are watching how Republicans vote today. On the nomination package, today Senate Republicans will move forward with.
Okay, you were just listening to Democrat Chuck Schumer there in the Senate, the minority leader. So now let's hear from the majority leader, Republican John Thune. Again, we're talking about this very big conversation taking place right now in the Senate on whether or not they should extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And so we'll hear from the Republican majority leader now.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, later today, we will vote on the Democrats' partisan messaging bill, which is a clean 3-year extension of the Biden COVID bonuses. And when I say clean, I mean all that I mean by that is no reforms, straight up extension, 3 years of a program without any reforms, any revisions, any changes that would actually help drive down healthcare costs instead of increasing healthcare costs and get rid of the rampant waste, fraud, and abuse in this program. The Democrats' plan that the Democrat leader called it on the floor the other day, it's their plan, Apparently, they think that a 3-year extension with no reforms to try and disguise the real impact of Obamacare's spiraling costs is actually a plan. I don't know how you can call it a plan. I came down here yesterday, Mr. President, to talk at length about some of the many problems with Obamacare and the perverse incentives it provides to move employees off of employer-provided insurance and into taxpayer-subsidized plans that have rampant year-over-year increases in premiums. The perverse incentives that it provides to insurance companies to enroll Americans, some of whom don't even know that they've been enrolled, so that the insurance companies can rake in even more subsidies. And then this so-called plan is rampant, and I say rampant, with fraud and abuse. Mr. President, a Government Accountability Office report released just last week found a whole host of problems, including the successful enrollment of fake individuals, Social Security number fraud, failure to verify or sometimes even request documentation, improper payment of subsidies, and the list goes on. And I want you to just take a look at this. This is the finding that came out of that study that was done by the Government Accountability Office, Mr. President. And here was the conclusion. Obamacare subsidies granted without documentation to 90% of fake accounts set up by a government watchdog. 90%, not 10%, not 5%. I mean, if you had a program that had 10% fraud in it, I think that would be a huge red flag, right? Wouldn't you be alarmed by that? I think most people would. I think most people would go, wow, that's a huge number. We need to do something to fix that. This program that we're talking about today, that they want to do a straight-up extension on, no reforms, no revisions, was found by the Government Accountability Office, an entity and agency that Democrats love and support, found that 90% of the accounts that were set up in the Obamacare exchanges were fake. Fake. Think about that. My aching back, Mr. President, this, you can't make this stuff up. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse on a yearly basis. And they don't want to do anything about it. They just want to straight up extend a program that the Government Accountability Office says has a 90% fraud rate. Well, Mr. President, that's obviously a huge problem, but I haven't even gotten to the central problem. And that is that Obamacare has utterly failed to control health care costs. Since 2013, Obamacare enrollees have seen a 221% increase in premiums. Now, let me just repeat that, Mr. President. Since 2013, Obamacare enrollees have seen a 221% increase in premiums. 221%. That means Obamacare premiums have grown at approximately 5 times the rate of inflation. So much for making health care more affordable. Now, Mr. President, this graph, I think, illustrates that, and actually this understates the problem because this shows since 2014. In the first year of its inception, when the Obama exchanges went live, there was a huge increase that the insurance companies built in their premium cost to cover all the things that they had to cover in the new program. So since 2013, that number is 221%. But even since 2014, when the exchanges were fully up and operating, it's had a 129% increase in premiums at the same time that the group market, in other words, the large and small group market where a lot of people get their insurance coverage through their employer, was going up at about half that rate, 68% in the small and large group market, which is where about 150 million people get their insurance. And frankly, the more people we could push into that market, it will not only lower their costs, but it also spreads the risk among a bigger pool. And that ultimately is the way in the long term you want to spread your costs. But what Obamacare does, because it uses taxpayer dollars to subsidize and pay insurance companies directly. The premiums go directly to the insurance companies. So insurance companies are making bank. They're getting enriched by this. But what it does at the same time is there's no incentive to control costs. And it's pushing people into that market. Because if you're an employer, or an employee for that matter, because most people respond to incentives, and you are told that you can get into a market where the taxpayers are going to cover it, and the employer is going to say, well, why should I continue to pay for the health insurance coverage for my employees if I can have the taxpayers pay for it? And so it's pushing more and more people out of the group market, this market right here, where there's a 68% increase, still way too much over the last decade. They're pushing more and more people out of that market into this market, which is double the rate of increase in premiums, and that doesn't include, as I said, the first year in its inception. If you add that first year back in there, that number is 221%. So you've got this system that is pushing more and more people into insurance coverage where the rates are skyrocketing, where the payments are going directly to the insurance companies, and where lower income taxpayers are subsidizing higher income taxpayers because there are no income limits. So now you can have people making $500,000, $600,000 a year are getting subsidized by the federal taxpayer, people making $40,000 or $50,000 a year, at a cost to the federal taxpayer, and their bill alone, which is just a 3-year extension, of $83 billion. You tell me in what universe that makes sense. That's astonishing. To have a program where 90% of the people who were fraudulently enrolled got approved. A program where the rate of increase is twice the rate in the group market and 3 times the rate of inflation, the consumer price index, over the same time period. And the insurance companies are getting rich. Lower income taxpayers are footing the bill, so more affluent Americans can have coverage. And the American taxpayer is paying $83 billion just for the 3-year extension. Waste, fraud, and abuse, higher rates, fiscally irresponsible, and the list goes on. Well, Mr. President, even Democrats have to be well aware of the fact that Obamacare has utterly failed to do what it promised. As I mentioned yesterday, we had one Democrat senator come down to the floor during the shutdown, and to his credit, he admitted the truth, and this is what he said. He said, "We did fail to bring down the cost of health care," it's a direct quote. We did fail to bring down the cost of health care. So what are Democrats proposing to do about that failure? As I said, exactly nothing. Democrats' so-called plan is a 3-year extension of the status quo. No reforms, no revisions, no rethinking of the way that Obamacare works, just a 3-year extension of the status quo, which I might add was put in place in response to the pandemic. When they extended these subsidies back in 2022, it was in August, the pandemic was long over. Long over. You can't, as I said, you can't make this stuff up. So we're not going to do anything to address the perverse incentives that push Americans out of the employer-sponsored health care system and onto taxpayer-subsidized plans. It's not going to do anything to address the perverse incentives that encourage insurance companies to enrich themselves at taxpayer expense. It's going to do nothing to address the rampant waste, fraud, and abuse in Obamacare. And most of all, Mr. President, it will do nothing to bring down health care costs. Nothing. Zero. Now, under Democrats' plan, insurance premiums will continue to spiral. American taxpayers will find themselves on the hook for ever-increasing subsidy payments. And don't think that all those payments are going to be going to vulnerable Americans. As I said, the Democrats' decision to remove any income cap on the Biden COVID bonuses has Americans making as much as $500,000 or more qualifying for taxpayer subsidies. $500,000. Do Democrats really think middle-class families should be subsidizing health care premiums for those making $500,000? Mr. President, Democrats don't have a health care plan. They don't extend the status quo. A failed, flawed, fraud program that is increasing costs 3 times the rate of inflation. Now, on the other hand, Mr. President, Republicans today will offer something that does actually lower costs. Earlier this week, we introduced legislation drafted by the chairman of the relevant committee, Senators Crapo and Cassidy, to make structural reforms to the individual health insurance market. In contrast to the Democrat bill, our bill would actually lower, as I said, Obamacare premium costs, and it would redirect government savings from the bill into health savings accounts for eligible Obamacare enrollees earning less than 700% of the federal poverty level, paired with some affordable insurance plans. These accounts would help individuals to meet their out-of-pocket costs, and for many individuals who don't use their insurance, who will barely use it, it would allow them to save for health care expenses down the road. So we have 2 paths here, Mr. President. One, a plan to start addressing the spiraling health care costs in Obamacare and make structural reforms that would drive down premium prices. 2, a proposal for a 3-year extension of the status quo. So you tell me who's serious about actually addressing the affordability of health care. Democrats may talk about helping Americans, but their bill is nothing more than a political messaging exercise that they hope they can use against Republicans next November. And so I hope that after today, they'll feel like they've checked the messaging box and will get serious about actually doing something about the spiraling health care costs under Obamacare. Republicans are ready to get to work, Mr. President. I'm not sure
Okay, just heard there from Senate Majority Leader Republican John Thune talking about their plan that they are introducing and why they believe the current status of those Affordable Care Act tax subsidies are flawed by his words. Now, again, we're looking at 2 different versions of a bill going to the Senate floor today when it comes to your health care, and it's all circling around the conversation of those tax credits. From the Democratic side, they want to extend those credits that are set to expire by the end of the year. But on the Republican side, their bill looks to end those tax credits, and they want to take extra money and put it into some health savings accounts for people who use the ACA platform. They say that that will help pay for out-of-pocket costs, okay? So the big thing also to keep in mind, at this point, neither bill is expected to meet that 60-vote threshold. So where this conversation goes from here, we still do not know when it comes to the impact of today's conversations on healthcare. But what we do know from various studies, including from KFF, that there are people who could stand to have a significant jump in their healthcare payments, their premiums, if these tax credits expire, as they are expected to in a few weeks, if the lawmakers are not able to reach some type of deal. And also keep in mind, this is the very reason, in large part, why we were in that record-breaking government shutdown. One of the concessions out of that, Republicans said that they would promise that we would have a vote. That's what brings us to today. They're having the conversation, and it looks like they are going to have this vote when it comes to the healthcare tax credits. But right now, does not look like either of these bills are going to pass. We'll see what happens, as we're expecting that in the coming hours. today. But one of the people who is obviously pushing on the Democratic side for the extension of those health care tax credits would be Senator Tim Kaine, the Democrat from right here in Virginia. He just released a statement moments ago. I'm going to read a bit about it in support of the 3-year extension of those premium tax credits. He said later today, the Senate will vote on simple legislation to extend Affordable Care Act premium tax credits and prevent health care costs from skyrocketing for millions of Americans and nearly 400,000 Virginians. He says he's heard from countless constituents about the difference this extension would make for their families who are already struggling with high prices above everything else, from food to housing and energy. He says the floodlights will be on my Republican colleagues who know that the American people, 78% of whom support extending these tax credits, expect them to vote for this legislation. Now, if they don't, he says they could very well be replaced at the ballot box by someone who will. Again, that's Democrat Tim Kaine right here from Virginia. He is referencing data points put forth. I mentioned KFF, the Kaiser Family Foundation, which looks into healthcare research across the nation. A survey found that a majority of the public said they did want the extension of those tax credits. And so we will see what happens here today. But speaking of Senator Tim Kaine, he is also a part of that Senate hearing that we were showing you live just moments ago before we went to the two leaders there in the Senate on the healthcare situation, talking about the deployment of the National Guard troops in our country, which has been a big topic across several different states, including Memphis, New Orleans, Chicago, Washington, D.C. So let's listen to the senator's comments and questions when it comes to those deployments. This conversation taking place right now.
Begin again, as many others have, just expressing condolences to the family of Sarah Beckstrom, 20-year-old specialist from Webster County, West Virginia. She enlisted in the West Virginia Army National Guard when she was a senior in high school. Andrew Wolf, the staff sergeant, 24 years old, who is, thank God, recovering in critical condition, but recovering from Martinsburg, had been in the Guard, also enrolled in his senior year in high school. I also want to mention to other colleagues a name that hasn't been mentioned, Alabama Staff Sergeant Jacob Hill, 30-year-old, who had served in the Guard for 13 years. He died during the deployment to D.C. in a non-duty medical emergency when he was stationed at residing in a hotel in Virginia. He died on the 13th of November. The D.C. deployment has been the subject of a litigation, and I want to read the ruling of the court in District of Columbia versus Donald J. Trump from November 20, 2025, 6 days before the two soldiers were assassinated. Here is the ruling of the court. First, the DOD defendants have exceeded the bounds of their authority under Title 49 of the D.C. Code and thus acted contrary to law in deploying the D.C. National Guard for non-military crime deterrence missions in the absence of a request from the city's civil authorities. And second, these defendants lack statutory authority under 32 U.S.C. Section 502, Section 32, to support their request for assistance from out-of-state National Guards and their actions in calling those guards to the district. The court ruled that the D.C. Guard couldn't be used for garden variety law enforcement activities without a request by the mayor, and the out-of-state guards could not be summoned here. That violated the defendant's legal responsibilities and exceeded it. The administration is appealing that order. That order came down 6 days before the assassination of these troops. The administration is appealing, as is their right. But I just want to say to the families, what we owe to you is a vigorous prosecution to the full extent of the law of the criminal who assassinated these two individuals, killing one and badly wounding the others, and badly wounding Staff Sergeant Wolf. But if this legal order is upheld, and these were unlawful missions, these individuals shouldn't have been here. They should have been celebrating Thanksgiving with their families at home rather than patrolling near Farragut Square in Washington. And if those legal orders are withheld, there's something additionally we owe these families in addition to the prosecution of the assassin. The civil officials responsible for an unlawful deployment will owe these families a deep, deep apology for the losses that they have suffered. The prosecution of the assassin is important, but responsibility and acceptance of responsibility from civil servants issuing illegal orders is also important. It's deeply important. I would encourage my colleagues to read this 61-page order that was issued. I think it's quite persuasive. We'll see how it stands up on appeal. But I had the deep feeling on the day that the sad news broke about the shooting that the two West Virginians should have been home with their families celebrating Thanksgiving that day rather than here on a mission of questionable legality. General Hugh, I want to ask you a question in my remaining seconds. You talked about the training that Guard members receive. What training do Guard members receive when they're deployed in these missions about dealing with folks who present with mental health issues? Local law enforcement receive very significant training on this topic. I wonder what training our National Guard members receive on this topic.
Senator, those that are deployed in Title X status receive two primary types of training before they're allowed to go on mission. The first is on the standing rules for the use of force to ensure that at first they learn how to de-escalate and then use any force as a last resort, but first non-deadly force before deadly force only when all lesser means have been attempted and failed and they're protecting themselves or the fellows.
I'm now over time, but is in either the two kinds of training that you were describing,
yes, sir,
do these Guard members receive the critical training about dealing with folks with mental health instances? I spoke with Mayor Bowser the other day, and she talked about the fact that the Metro PD all receive significant mental health training because a significant percentage of the instances where they're interacting with folks who might be a danger to themselves or others are driven by mental health issues. It was her impression, and mine as a former mayor and governor, that that's not the kind of training that our National Guard members receive.
What is the answer to that, General?
Senator and Chairman, the answer is they do not receive specific training in that regard.
Thank you.
Senator Scott.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Thank each of you for being here and your decades of service to our country and our war fighters.
Okay, again, that was our senator here in Virginia, Tim Kaine, who was speaking on that hearing that is taking place right now, looking into deployments of National Guard troops here in the country. Again, it's a very busy day. I mean, on our big board, I don't know if we can pull that up just over here, Sarah. We are monitoring several different things, obviously hearings and the big conversation taking place on the Senate floor today when it comes to your health care and what will happen with those health care tax credits. Will they be extended? Will they be cut, and what will happen in order to make up for the cost that could have on Americans? But we are also looking at other things here within our community, including our forecast, because our team of meteorologists have issued a weather impact alert coming up in the next few days on Monday. We got meteorologist Hunter Force, who's joining us right now. And Hunter, from my understanding, it's because we're going to see some really, really bitterly cold temps on Monday, but it's been cold. So what makes this so cold that you all felt like you needed to issue an alert?
Yeah, you know, like you were saying, it's been cold. It's been a very cold start to December. We've been about 8 to 9 degrees below average so far. And as we head into Monday morning especially, we're going to see an Arctic front pushing through, which is going to bring in some of the coldest air we've seen all season. So wind chills could be in the single digits early Monday morning, 7, 8, 9, 10 degrees. And then by the time we get to, 7, 8 o'clock, they're in the low teens. So heading off to work, it's going to be a very, very cold start to the day. You have to bundle up. It's going to be so cold. You're going to want to make sure your, pipes aren't going to freeze. So you have to take precautions with that. So it's that type of cold where a weather impact alert was issued, because it's just could be a dangerous situation if, you're not prepared for it. And not only dangerous for yourself, but also could impact parts of your home, if your pipes freeze, it's not a great situation. So that's why we're giving this a little bit more, caution compared to the other types of cold weather we've been seeing, because this one's just a little bit more dangerous.
So are we looking at more snow again? Did I hear you on that also? I know a lot of people were affected by that here in Hampton Roads. Monday in particular, these days they come together. But yes, Monday.
Right.
We had that Monday big day, and then it led into Tuesday. Are we expecting any more?
So on Friday, tomorrow, there's a chance we could see, a few flurries. Not expecting anything crazy. And then as we head into Sunday, there's a chance there's going to be a clipper system pushing through. That could bring us a little bit more in the way of some snow showers. Now, it's not looking like how it was this past Monday, but we could see, a few of those snow showers bringing us a little bit in the way of accumulation, a little bit, nothing wild. The GFS model is a bit colder, so it's bringing more snow to the area, at least a little bit more widespread for a little bit, not very long lasting. But the European model is a little bit warmer, bringing more in the way of rain for a lot of us rather than snow. So right now, it's just something we have to watch over the next day or so, especially heading into the weekend. But just prepare for the chance for a little bit of wintry weather on Sunday, but nothing, we haven't ever seen before.
All right, so really it seems like the big thing we want people to know, obviously bundle up, make sure that you're prepared when you're going out the door, especially if you have to spend an extended amount of time outside. Right. But the other thing, and making sure you said this, but to reiterate, when we put out these weather impact alerts, it is not to scare, but to prepare. So when you're talking about your home, listen, all the things that we've been saying about your pipes and making sure everything's good, this gives you a few days in advance to make sure that you're good.
Right.
If you need to go out and get something, go ahead and do that over the weekend. If you need to, insulate something in your home, you got a few days to do that.
Right.
But don't be surprised on Monday you walk out and things are just, the bottom is dropped off.
Yeah, it's going to be frigid. And I mean, it gives you, like you were saying, gives you time to prepare. Maybe you don't know how to prepare, your pipes for this type of weather. I'm not sure I know the best way. You do a little drip right out of your drains, right, to help keep them from freezing over.
I always forget that you are from a southern state that even further than me, right? Florida? Is it Florida?
I'm from Connecticut.
You're from Connecticut? I completely forgot that.
But don't you just leave the tap running and just a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, you just let it drip.
Just let it drip.
It gets cold in Connecticut.
I know, but I haven't had my own property in Connecticut, so it's it wouldn't be I wouldn't know 100
But you're right.
The best practices.
You are right. You
that
can
would be my dad.
Just the drip. You don't want it to be a full-on flow. Don't just keep it running all day, right? But
just a little,
but a little bit of a make
drip.
sure it's consistent so that it doesn't freeze over and those kind of things.
Right.
You got it, Hunter.
Hey,
you in there?
So if you're like me, it gives you time to look up the best way to save your pipes.
Or don't we have information too that they can find on our website, 13newsnow.com, and then you can also look on our app that you can download too. And then, our team of Mets, we do also have the Weather Impact 24/7. That's right here on 13 News Now Plus. So many things that you guys are doing to make sure people stay informed and that they're prepared ahead of time. And so anything else, man, as we look forward, I know obviously today is not the weather impact alert. It's in a few days on Monday. Anything else people need to know to kind of set themselves up for success?
Just prepare for some very extremely cold weather. I know it's been cold this entire month so far. It's going to get extremely, extremely colder. Monday morning and throughout the entire day, but it's not going to be long lasting. It's only going to be Monday, a tad degree warmer on Tuesday, but still cold. And then we're going to have a nice warm up by the middle and end of next week. Could see some upper 50s pushing 60. So that's going to feel phenomenal compared to what we're going to be having on Monday morning.
You know, it's funny that you say that because I remember when I was living in central Illinois and there was one particular winter, there were several where it was just so cold. I think it had gotten to negative 36 when you add in the wind chill for a few days. I mean, it was just terrible. And it had climbed at one point to 0 degrees. And I never thought this would be true. This guy from Georgia, this kid from Georgia, I felt like I can go outside in shorts. I mean, it was basically a heat wave when you think about it. I mean, the difference in the temperatures. It was cold, but I felt warm because I'd been in negative 35, negative 32 for like at least 4 days.
Eugene, I 1,000% know what you mean because that happened to me once in high school.
It sounds crazy, but it's real.
It was in the negatives for days and days. And then one day, I think it was a little bit warmer than 0. It was maybe like 15 or 20. I put my windows down. I was like, it feels good out. I was like, it's pretty nice.
I told my family, and they thought I was insane. You know, my entire family's Georgia, Louisiana, and but I did. So I'm glad that you are here to tell everyone who's listening that it's not crazy.
I mean, I was just thinking about this morning when I walked outside. It was in the upper 30s. Feels like temperature was around 30, and I walked out and I was like, oh, it's not too bad this morning. I was like, it feels pretty good. But like, I feel like we get acclimated, or some of us get acclimated to this cooler weather so quickly.
Yeah.
That, I mean, if it was this in, September, we would be freezing our behinds.
Yes.
But I mean, now it's like, oh, it's 40 out. I'm like, feels pretty nice. But then the one thing that gets you is the breeze. Once that just hits you in the face, then you're like, all right.
Yeah.
Enough.
Many tears were shed at one point because of cold plus the wind.
You're right. But if it's just calm, if it's 40 and calm, it's not too bad this time of year.
Not too bad. All right. Well, look, you can prepare yourself. You got a few days. That weather impact alert, that bitter cold, dangerous cold happening on Monday. So take these next few days. Make sure you're prepared and that your home, where you live, all of that is good to go. Hunter, we appreciate it. We'll continue to watch the forecast in the coming days as you guys continue to kind of press that message and to see if there's any changes that could potentially happen in the forecast for Monday and beyond. I do want to get into, before we transition into our next conversation that kind of does also deal with the cold, we just got an alert that came in from Gloucester County, the sheriff's office up there. It looks like a deadly shooting has taken place in that community. Right now, what I'm seeing from the Gloucester County Sheriff's Office, they are investigating a homicide. One person is dead. They were shot. A suspect did run away from that scene. It was on George Washington Memorial, but they were able to later bring that person into custody in Lancaster County. But in the process of all of this, the searching for that suspect being on the run, some of you in that community may have heard that local schools were on lockdown, and that is why they were searching for that individual. The schools in that area decided that they were going to go into secure mode while that search was taking place. But again, that suspect has been taken into custody. We don't know information about the person who they believe pulled the trigger or the person who has died. But again, as soon as we get that info coming in from Gloucester County, I believe we have a crew going that way right now. We'll, of course, let you know, if not on this platform, online and on the other platforms, on air, etc., that we have here. But I was talking about, a conversation when it comes to these cold temps. Okay, we also know around this time, because it gets cold in the weather, it's also really big for flu season as well. Out of North Carolina, their Health and Human Services Department right now reporting a rise in flu activity and flu-related deaths. 3 deaths reported this week, bringing the total to 9, which is higher than this time last year. Last year, the state reported just over 540 flu-related deaths, which was the most since 2009. Okay, so there is a strain right now that officials are saying in North Carolina. It's called subclade K. It's pretty dominant at the moment. It differs slightly from this year's vaccine, but early data is showing, according to these officials, the shots does still offer protection, but they are seeing some flu-related deaths and illnesses kind of on an uptick there in North Carolina. And with that in mind, I did speak with a doctor with CHKD about not only the flu, but other respiratory illnesses, as we are right now kicking off flu season, okay? And so for the next few minutes, we'll listen to a conversation between me and Dr. Laura Sass with the Children's Hospital, the King's Daughters, here in Hampton Roads on what you can do to best prepare and protect yourself from respiratory illness. We referenced flu season. When does it officially start, and how long does it go?
Well, it usually starts around now. It changes as flu seasons are cyclical. Sometimes we have a very mild season and then the next year we get hit hard. That's what we're predicting for this year based on what is happening in Australia and the Southern Hemisphere. Remember, it's a winter thing. So as the weather gets cooler, and people spend more times indoors and there's more transmission from person to person for those respiratory viruses like influenza. We know that in Australia, they had a lot of flu. So our prediction is that we usually mimic what happens. It is starting now, but we haven't been hit really hard and heavy yet. But we pay attention.
We talk about the best practices all the time on air to kind of protect yourself. And a part of that is the vaccine, the flu vaccine. When's the best time to get it?
Now is perfect. We actually already finished our influenza campaign here at the hospital. We have everyone vaccinated by October. The other health systems do similar things to make sure that everyone is healthy. Remember that vaccine does not prevent you from getting the flu. It prevents you from getting the serious complications of the flu that would give you higher risks, such as getting hospitalized or having secondary infections like pneumonia. Vaccination does not prevent infection, but prevents the serious complications of those infections. That's how vaccines work. And that is actually hold true for both flu and COVID and all of our other vaccine programs.
And people always want to know how effective this year's flu vaccine is. Do we have an answer for that?
It's a little early to tell because we really haven't hit our flu season. We generally estimate it's about anywhere from 50 to 70% effective, which when people hear that, they're horrified. Like, why wouldn't it be more effective? Especially when we have vaccines like measles that are 95% effective. And part of that is we actually change the flu shot every year. Well, not we personally, we as the global community. And it's based on what circulated the year before and how well that guess and match happened. The good thing about it is a little bit of protection still helps you from not getting those serious complications of influenza. And you may only have a mild cold and maybe not even a fever compared if you're unvaccinated, where you're at much greater risk to get the fevers, the body aches, and just generally feeling bad. People who've actually had influenza, remember it because you don't feel good. It is not the sniffles.
And people often say, too, you're talking about some of the symptoms of the flu where they'll get a flu vaccine or a vaccination and they'll feel some type of side effects from it. Are there any side effects that people should maybe expect if they are to get the vaccine?
Yeah, sometimes you can get a sore spot on your shoulder of where you get it. And sometimes you can feel not quite yourself right after the vaccine. That's your immune system working. That means your body is actually responding to that vaccine and you're having some immune response to the protection. Some people will get a swollen lymph node in that arm where you get that shot. It was much more common with our COVID vaccines than with influenza, but that can happen as well. And those only last a day or so and go away.
About if me or my child has asthma, allergies, any other kind of medical complications, is the vaccine safe for them? And then also, what are some things that you can possibly do to prevent even further getting sick?
Yeah, well, yes, the vaccine is actually very safe for them. And in fact, it is very highly recommended for them. Anybody who has an underlying illness or condition that would put them at greater risk to have bad flu needs it. So asthma, anybody who has other respiratory, like adults who have COPD, adults with heart disease, our patients whose immune systems may be impacted by cancer. The flu vaccines we have are not live viruses, generally, the ones that you get the shot for. The one that goes up your nose is different. That is live, and certain people shouldn't get that one. But it is there to make sure that you get a little bit of protection. And so we do strongly suggest all those patients get the flu shot. There are no more risk to get flu shot side effects with those. So if you have asthma, you don't have any increased risk to getting a sore arm or some just generally not feeling well than you would if you didn't have asthma. But if you have asthma and you get the flu, you're much more at high risk for going into the hospital. We know that last year our flu season had a great increase in childhood deaths across the United States. And so the majority of those children were not immunized. And so it's, one would hope that if they had been, when you just look at those numbers overall, that might have prevented some pediatric deaths. And so that's why, especially in children with underlying issues, it's important to get them vaccinated.
At what point, what symptoms should kind of tell a parent, hey, my child needs to stay home from school?
Fever. No, and in fact, there are rules for that for the school systems. As anyone who has a parent who knows when their child gets a fever, you get that phone call and you can't come back. And so fever is a big one. When they don't overall feel well, and parents know their children, they know what their children's normal behavior is. You don't want to send a child to school who's coughing so much that they can't control it, and that's distracting for them in their learning environment, and it's distracting for the other children as well. So those are the big ones. Vomiting. Now, influenza in kids can make people vomit. You generally don't get loose stools or diarrhea with it. People talk about the summer flu. It's not the same thing. But adults generally don't get the same side effects as that, or the same symptoms. They don't really get the vomiting part, but kids can. You shouldn't send a kid to school if they're throwing up.
Are all of those symptoms the same if I were to ask you, when should they go to a doctor?
A little bit. So generally, if someone's still sick 2 or 3 days later, or they're not acting correctly, they're not thinking, like you talk to them and you just know that there's something not quite right, that is the first thing to do is call your doctor, call your pediatrician's office, because they may know that we are seeing an increase in flu, or they could have one of the other respiratory viruses as well and give you some good guidance. As always, if any child has trouble breathing, is not recognizing their parents are not acting like they know what's going on, those you go to the emergency room. It's never wrong if you're worried to call the doctor or go find and seek medical care, because we don't want those children to be sick. The other thing to look for is if a child has the flu, is sick for a few days, gets better, and then gets sick again, especially with fever, those are the times you need to go to the doctors, because that's a time where we worry about children getting a secondary bacterial pneumonia, either with a staph or strep bacteria, that's actually going to need to be treated differently, and usually with antibiotics. In the beginning, you remember you don't need antibiotic for the flu because it's a virus. It doesn't work. But when you have the flu, it actually changes the way your body reacts to different bacteria and can get you greater at risk for those infections, which is one of the reasons why people die after the flu. It's the flu combined often with another bacteria.
So we're in the house, people are sick, or maybe we know people who are sick. How can we reduce the spread of, something like the flu inside our house if we already know it's infiltrated into the household?
Yes. So we already know a lot of things. I mean, the pandemic was not fun for any of us, but it gave us some really good skills. People then realized hand washing. Hand washing is amazing. Washing your hands after you blow your nose, after you cough, coughing into your elbow instead of into your hand, wearing a mask. Masks help prevent infections. The period of time where we were all isolating for COVID and we were all 6 feet apart and not socializing, we had virtually no influenza the next year, because all of those viruses are transmitted the same way, through respiratory coughing and droplets. They land on something, making sure you clean surfaces, with something. You don't need something fancy. Most of your household cleaners are good enough. And really you need, cleaning off the toys that the kid has in their mouth. And that helps a whole lot. But hand washing is a wonderful thing.
Thank you so much. Is there anything that we haven't hit on when it comes to this topic that you are like, I want to make sure that our viewers and fellow people in the community hear when it comes to the flu or respiratory illness over the next
Mhm.
few months?
So one of the big things is vaccines. Vaccines are safe, they're effective, but remembering that, again, immunization does not prevent that infection, it prevents the serious complications of that infection. And I think that is sometimes it gets lost a little bit. Staying away from someone who's sick. So it's hard at the holidays because we want to go to your, everyone's house and see. But if you are sick or your child is sick, maybe stay home and celebrate the next day or after everyone gets better. No one wants to be that first patient who exposes grandma and has worse outcomes because of that. And so wash your hands, wear your mask, and get your flu shot.
You heard her. Those are the instructions that they are leaving for people as we are in this flu season and other respiratory illnesses. They're wanting to make sure people can be as protected as possible and just prepared as we look at every single year. But we do have some areas that are seeing an uptick already in those flu cases, as I told you prior to that interview in North Carolina, for instance. Okay, let's switch gears right now, okay? And we know it's the holiday season. People are getting prepared for gifts and just trying to meet with their families. And that can also mean travel. Okay. And with us right now from AAA Tidewater here in Hampton Roads, we have Ryan Adcock, because Ryan, from what I'm seeing from your holiday travel outlook, we have another record expected for people to be traveling. What are you guys seeing?
Absolutely. It's going to be another record-breaking year, not only for the country, but for the state of Virginia as well. We're forecasting that 3.41 million Virginians are going to travel more than 50 miles from their homes. So a lot of people are going to be out there on the roads, in the skies, on the rails, on the water, wherever have you. There are going to be a lot of people.
On the water. I love to hear it. And, it's interesting. When I was looking at the numbers, you said the 3.4 million Virginians, but across the country, 122 million Americans are going to be traveling. Most of that is going to be either by car, correct? What do you attribute another year? It seems like the last few years, each year we've seen a record number expected, and then it's kind of backed up in the data. What do you attribute that to?
So in all of our travel forecasts throughout the year, our benchmark is comparing all of our travel numbers to 2019 before the pandemic, when obviously travel numbers tanked and people had all of those travel opportunities taken away from them. They were secluded away from their friends and family. So we've found that post-pandemic that is really top of mind for people and on the top of people's priority list, getting to see their friends and family, especially around these holiday times when that's very much a part of the culture of the holiday, is seeing your friends and family.
And yeah, you were telling me that, like you just said, kind of comparing it to the pre-COVID metrics for everything in 2019. I think when people think about travel right now, we're looking at the gas prices that we're seeing, and people are thinking, okay, can I afford it when I'm driving? And we were looking at the issues with planes that people were having just a month ago during the shutdown, so may have expected people's planes. But we were looking at the gas averages, Sarah. If we can pull those up, it's not bad right now. It's not bad at all.
It is not bad. As you can see, the national average there is $2.94, and then the state average is $3.83, and then that's the same average down here in this metro area, Norfolk, as well. And for the state, it's a little bit less than what the average was this time last year, which was $2.89. And then for Norfolk, it's just a little bit more, slightly more expensive than this time last year. It was $2.77. So nothing to really gawk about. But as you can see, they've been holding pretty steady here these past few weeks. Just a little bit of fluctuation, which is what we normally see.
And I think we talked with you all around the Thanksgiving holiday, but at that point we were still kind of just coming off of the government shutdown, and a lot of people were trying to figure out if they were going to try to fly because you had the restrictions, and so then they were driving. But I think the fact that has ended, coupled with some of these prices that we have in communities, I think that all kind of adds into the holidays. I know every year you guys also put out different kind of warnings to make sure people keep in mind. What are some of the things that you want people to remember as they get on their travel, especially knowing that most of them are going to be hitting the road?
The blanket message is to just prepare as much as you can beforehand, whether that be physically preparing your vehicle, checking the treads on your tires, checking the fluids in your vehicle, checking your battery, mentally preparing yourself to potentially sit in some traffic, because it's a fact that the roads are going to be busy than they normally are, especially down here where the roads are already very busy. All of the pain points that we normally see in traffic are going to be that much more exacerbated when we have this holiday travel. And so as we get into our travel forecast period, which starts on December the 20th, it's going to be an elevated number of people that are out there on the road. So whether that be traveling earlier in the day before morning rush hour or later in the evening after evening rush hour, just preparing as much as you can beforehand.
All right. Do you have your plans already set?
Yes, I'm going to.
Sarah, did you hear the sigh in his voice? He said yes.
I know. I'm heading out on Tuesday evening, but those days leading up to Christmas, which obviously is on a Thursday this year, you're going to have holiday travelers mixing in with just regular commuters that are leaving to and from work as well. And these forecast numbers are only for people that are traveling more than 50 miles from their home for Christmas. So it's not accounting for any local travel at all.
People just in your city, in your community.
Absolutely. So there are going to be more than 3.41 million Virginians traveling. Just that 3.41 is over 50 miles from their home. That's what we constitute as a road trip.
Listen, try to get out as early as you can. Please do not get upset when you get caught in the traffic, especially on those bridge tunnels, because you try to leave at the last available second during peak hours as well. What are the days people need to be mindful of again, Ryan?
We're forecasting that Saturday and Sunday, the 20th and the 21st, are going to be very busy. And then as well, we're forecasting that the day after Christmas is going to be very busy, whether that be people traveling back home or traveling to additional destinations for the year-end holiday season. We're forecasting that those days will be especially busy out there on the road. So ignorance is not bliss. So just preparing as much as you can beforehand, whether that be every day before I go home, I'm on Google Maps checking to see what part of 64 is red, what part is yellow, to see what route I need to take to get home.
You have to.
And so whether that be checking that before you leave or taking a roundabout way to get to where you're going, or seeing that red on the map and saying, I'm going to have to sit in traffic. Let me put on a nice long audiobook, a podcast, do whatever woosah you need to do to mentally prepare yourself to sit in that traffic.
At the end of the day, it is a season of holiday cheer. So keep that in mind when you think to have any kind of road rage. And so, Ryan, we appreciate you, man, coming in. Hopefully you have a great holiday yourself. I know you all are busy around this time of year tracking all of the data, and we look forward to seeing what comes at the tail end after the holiday season, what you all tracked, and hopefully we don't get that uptick also in like crashes that we see that come around this time of year. People are careful and are able to get to and from their destinations. But Ryan Adcock, AAA Tidewater, thank you so much for coming in, man. Appreciate you. Okay, we want to talk about this real quick because this just came in. This is regarding the case of Kilmar Obrego Garcia. You know that name. A federal judge has ordered the immediate release of Obrego Garcia from immigration detention. This coming in literally just moments ago. That district judge saying that since Obrego Garcia's wrongful detention in El Salvador, he has been redetained again without lawful authority. Okay, and so this current ruling says the absence of removal order prevents the government from removing him from the United States. So backstory for Obrego Garcia, you may know, a Salvadorian native who had been living in Maryland with his family, was deported way back in March to El Salvador despite a previous court order in 2019 barring his deportation to that country due to fear of persecution. This was after the Trump administration, which has repeatedly claimed that he is a member of a criminal gang, which Obrego Garcia and his attorneys have denied. He was brought back to the U.S. in the summer to face human smuggling charges in Tennessee. He pleaded not guilty to those after being released to his family in Maryland. He was then re-detained. That's what that judge was talking about in their order by immigration authorities, and is currently being held by officials in a detention facility in Pennsylvania. Now this federal judge saying that he needs to be released immediately. That is breaking news that just came down the wire. Meanwhile, right now, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is being questioned by House committee leaders about what she is calling international threats, okay? This is live, taking place in the moment. We have not been able to key in and lock in on this, but we're going to take just a few moments before our next guest comes in. Listen in to what Kristi Noem is saying right now before a House committee.
To school safety. I think that's just so important. That brings us all together. I wanted to say I want to use the bulk of my time to just thank you, because we don't do that enough here. It's always finger pointing. It's always somebody else's fault. Please go back to your agencies and thank the men and women that are serving every day and helping to keep this country safe. With that, I'd like to give you a little time to talk about the Venezuelan situation and what the Coast Guard is doing.
The operation that was conducted yesterday morning was a Coast Guard-led operation. It was in partnership with the Department of War and the Department of Justice, the FBI as well, and it was a successful operation directed by the President to ensure that we're pushing back on a regime that is systematically covering and flooding our country with deadly drugs and killing our next generation of Americans. Just the drugs that the Coast Guard has been able to interdict on the waters since that President Trump has been in office has been enough lethal doses of cocaine to kill 177 million Americans. That's 2/3 of our country that has been saved by blowing up, by going after and bringing to justice these individuals that are out at sea, and those individuals that are funding it with a shadow fleet of sanctioned oil that should never be sold to benefit their profits and their pockets to kill Americans.
Thank you for that update. For many of us that served in uniform, oftentimes it was overseas. It was in the Middle East, or it was in Asia, or it was in Europe. And I think those AORs are very important. But for too long, president after president after president, our backyard has been left wide open, and we're completely shocked why all these terrorists are in our country and all these people are unvetted. All this chaos is happening when in our own backyard was unsafe. So thank you again for one. I know you traveled, you met with heads of state, El Salvador, Mexico, a couple that come to mind. But I just want to thank you and for making our backyard a priority, and ultimately to keep Americans safe. Texans are more safe today than we were a year ago, and a lot of that is due to President Trump and due to the leadership that I'm seeing right here of executing those policies. Thank you, thank you, thank you. With that, Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Ramirez, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman.
American citizens have been arrested or detained. We focus on those that are here illegally.
Secretary Noem, you lie and you lied to the American people. I will be including into the record an article by ProPublica from October 16, 2025, entitled, "We found that more than 170 U.S. citizens have been held by immigration agents. They've been kicked." There's nothing smiling about U.S. citizens. I'm sorry, that's very inappropriate. Let me continue. Okay. They've been kicked, dragged, and detained for days. The next one.
The Trump administration has specifically targeted the worst of the worst. The individuals that we are going after are those that are violent criminals, those that are breaking our laws.
Secretary Noem, again, you lied to the American people. I will be including into the record an article by the NBC News from December 7, 2025, entitled, "ICE has arrested nearly 75,000 people with no criminal records, data shows." The co-equal branch of government, and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor decisions made by the highest court of the land. Yes or no, Secretary?
We are abiding by all federal judges' orders. Absolutely.
The Justice Department said that when the administration was ordered back in March to stop sending detained migrants to a mega prison in El Salvador, you personally made the final call to continue the flights anyway. Is that correct?
And the decisions that are made on deportations, where flights go and when they go, are my decision at the Department of Homeland Security. And we'll continue to do the right thing, continue to work and protect Americans, no matter what radical judge comes out and tries to stop us. We'll do.
You lied on the record, and you lied to members of this committee. You violated court orders by not turning around deportation flights bound for El Salvador, where we know that hundreds of people under your leadership have reported that they were raped, they were beaten, and they nearly died. And your agents used chemical weapons in Chicago despite court orders from District Court Judge Ellis forbidding their use. Secretary Noem, you, Gregory Bovino, and your ICBP and DHS deputized agents have waged an unaccountable, unlawful, unconstitutional war against communities across the nation. Our residents have been surveilled, they've been threatened, they've been tear gassed, they've been hit with pepper balls, they've been shot, they've been subjected to warrantless arrest and precision immobilization maneuvers, they've been kidnapped and disappeared under your leadership. So we have a lot to talk about, but you and your department continue to reject congressional oversight. And you know how I know this? I know this because I've requested a meeting with ICE Field Office Director Russell Hutt. I requested a meeting with Field Office Director Samuel Olson. And when you came to Chicago on October 3rd, I publicly and formally requested a meeting with you. So I'm going to be including a letter I sent on October 3rd requesting a meeting with Secretary Noem. So, Secretary Noem, I want to ask you again, will you commit to meet with me, yes or no?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a lot to talk about, and actually my scheduler has a couple dates that I'll get to you after this meeting. I appreciate that. So look, I want to be very clear. You have misused resources appropriated by Congress. You've engaged in unethical behavior. You have repeatedly made false and misleading statements to Congress and to the press, and you've undermined the separation of powers and disregarded the role of Congress and the courts. Bottom line, you lie with impunity. You reject checks and balances, and you ignore Congress and the courts. Your options are limited. Either you're going to resign, Trump's going to fire you, or you will be impeached. I've already called for your resignation. You may remember I hand-delivered my request to you back in May, and I urge you to reconsider resignation because I've taken the first step towards your impeachment, and I've called on the Judiciary Committee to open an investigation into your lawlessness. Mr. Chairman, I know that at the end we'll be entering a number of articles into consent, but since I have a few moments, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter calling the Judiciary Committee to investigate Secretary Noem's impeachable offenses. Whatever you choose, the American people will have justice, Secretary, and you will be held accountable. I'm going to make sure of that every single day. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Luttrell, for 5 minutes of questions. Thank you.
That is happening live right now. You can see Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem there being grilled in a way by a Democratic leader there in the House committee as she is being questioned today, and she's presenting on some conversations regarding international threats. But you can hear there that some lawmakers taking the moment to ask about certain policies, particularly surrounding ICE and immigration in our country. But right now we want to transition our conversation to right here in Virginia when it comes to our children who are in school. There's a new report that is quite positive for the Commonwealth. For a while, we saw after the pandemic that the state was dealing with rising absenteeism, students who weren't going to class when we came back into school full time. And Jeremiah Beatty is joining us now, one of our reporters, on a new study that has found that the numbers are not only better, but there is at least one clear reason why we think they have improved. Jeremiah, what is the story that you're working on, and what have they found?
Hey there. So I spoke with the director of No Kid Hungry, Sarah Steely. Sorry, let me say that right, Sarah Steely. And she basically broke it down and said it all comes down to making breakfast easier for students to get. So what they did here was basically allows students the opportunity to not only get breakfast at the start of their day, but also after the bell. So in between first or second period. And they found by having, allowing this accessibility for students, children would come to school because that's one less thing for parents to worry about. They know, you know, if we get our kids to school, they at least have breakfast and lunch covered. So that's kind of the idea of that. And when kids, we talk about it all the time, when they have food, how that improves focus and really drives and increases their focus in school in the classroom. So this initiative really kind of showed how this has really changed things for schools across Hampton Roads and, of course, in the state.
So basically, they're kind of saying that, hey, as we feed the children in the morning and find different ways to make sure that they have food, they're coming to school, right? So they're linking those two things.
Yeah, they're coming to school. They're finishing the school day, and it's really positive. And I do want to say, chronic absenteeism dropped to 14.8%, and that is down from more than 20% during the COVID-19 pandemic. And Sarah Steely said it proves that focusing on school breakfast is a powerful strategy to connect kids with the school day and with nutrition they need to thrive. So that's something positive that she shared with us.
Yeah, there's been a lot of studies over the years that kind of look at how you are able, how your brain functions when you don't eat. And I mean, listen, I'm a few years removed from high school and middle school and elementary school. But I remember the difference between the stretches of days where I didn't have anything, going into that first period, and when I knew I could eat something. Like I remember even, also being an athlete in school, there was a real difference. You feel sluggish. You're definitely not as sharp. Shoot, now as an adult.
That's what I was going to say.
Same thing.
It doesn't matter if you're a child. As an adult, if I don't have my overnight oats in the breakfast, which is for me a big deal, and some coffee, I'm not the greatest person to interact with. And that is just the truth. But
I don't know what you're talking about.
Important. It's your fuel, I like to say. It's, especially if you're getting that protein, the eggs and all that good stuff. It's good for your brain and your energy, and for these students, I mean, that's important.
And, also we know there are a lot of students, if they are not fed at school, unfortunately, they may not get a meal. There is a large percentage of young people where their primary meals during the day, because of the circumstances that they face at home and their families may face, they are eating at school. Those are like their core meals that they are often getting throughout the day. It's the same reason why schools for years now have provided free lunches during the summertime for families to come and pick up, because they know that there is a food insecurity issue amongst families and kids in our community. So it makes sense that these two things would be connected. And so, I mean, is there anything else that we found in this particular report? I'm sure that the governor and others are looking at this, and they're very excited to see it.
So there were 4 divisions that had the highest participation when it came to seeing this positive feedback. That was Chesapeake, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and Newport News. They made the top 10 of the list. So for those divisions, I mean, that's amazing news to hear. That means students are starting to come. They're keeping up with those numbers, and students are being fed. So they're doing a really good job with that.
Yeah, and I know we're actually, if I remember correctly, we're a few years removed. It was a few years ago, 24, 23, I think, Governor Youngkin created a task force specifically for chronic absenteeism. And at the time, looking at the data, the administration said that they were concerned, as you mentioned previously, that there were more students who just weren't showing up for school during COVID, which was, some might argue, is easier to show up, but a lot of others, we learned, would say no, actually, motivating a kid to show up to class and their parents to be involved too. If they're not, even something as simple as clicking on a stream or Zoom, didn't necessarily happen for a lot. Yeah. So anyway, that task force, I know they started a few years after things kind of got back into what it was supposed to be. Is this partnering with this study at all?
Yes, the All in Virginia plan,
Okay.
which is with Governor Glenn Youngkin's administration. So they did highlight that analysis in that report that found, extreme chronic absenteeism all those years ago. And now they're happy to report that's improved. And I do want to talk about Steely also shared that they hope to keep the momentum going, looking at no-cost meal options for families to continue reaching more and more students because, they're just seeing numbers improve. Parents are getting their children to school, and these children are learning. So that's all around good.
No, that is good. I think each of us have obviously we've gone to school, so we remember these days. And I know Sarah is busy over here at the moment, but I wanted to pull her in to Sarah. I mean, even for you, do you remember kind of any differences that you may have felt in motivation or performance if you weren't able to get that meal to start off your day?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think especially right now with the cost of groceries, it makes a really big difference. With inflation, the cost of groceries, it makes a really big difference to just be able to go to school and have it there, as opposed to having to do it before you get to school. I think that's another big reason why it is probably making a huge difference right now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because as a kid, you don't always think about that, but your parents are.
Yes.
And they're the ones that are having to crunch the numbers and figure out whether or not they can go and get X, Y, and Z from the store or just get X and Y. You know what I mean? And so I think that obviously then trickles down to the students. You may not fully understand, why I don't have, something that I can just eat beforehand to go to school, or after school. All of that factors in with the inflation right now.
Yeah, and like I said before, it really takes the weight off the parents. I mean, I went to the grocery store, what was that? Last weekend, $200, maybe $260 plus for 2 weeks. I shopped for 2 weeks. So thank God I'm just a single woman, but if I'm a family of 5, could you imagine? You really have to make some magic, make the impossible possible.
Listen, that's what
Thank God for these schools out here that are really, putting in the work and trying to meet these families where they are.
Yeah, so. It makes a difference. It makes an impact. You just mentioned just the grocery prices. I mean, my mom would say it often, with her and me, you find a way to make a way. And, I get it now as an adult, likewise. But that's when you get creative for a lot of people when you try to stretch things further than what you can. But there are a lot of families right now that are in that predicament, just like you mentioned, families of 5, et cetera. We've been talking to the food banks over the course of the weeks and how many more people have been showing up there at our local food banks who need support, people who haven't done it before. So it's not this picture of, when people think about food insecurity, people who are kind of pinched right now, it's not just this, they're not, they're homeless or, they're without a job or unemployed. No, these are people who are neither of those things, but the budget has had to adjust. And, that also can trickle down. But Jeremiah, if you doing that, though, the 200, I mean, if you want to drop off some plates at work.
We meal prep, which is a huge tool I enjoy. I get my proteins, my veggie, and my rice. You can't mess up with that. So
always.
That's something good that I enjoy doing. But
especially with our schedule.
Oh, yeah.
With Jeremiah and I, we're both daybreak, so early. The sun is not up yet.
Yes.
And so you just got to prepare in ahead of time. So anyway, but Jeremiah, anything else with this that you have? I mean, this is great to hear for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
I have nothing else but, look, I say but if if you're watching this and your family in need and you want, to learn more about programs, reach out to your school. You'll be connected to someone that can help you and make sure you have what you need. Your student has what they need. So there are resources out there. It's just a matter of you contacting the right people.
Okay. All right. Jeremiah Beatty with that report, and that's going to be airing today.
Yes.
At noon, in a few minutes.
A few minutes.
In a few minutes at noon on 13 News Now at noon. Okay, Jeremiah, we appreciate you sticking with us. I'll go ahead and let you get on out if you need to do something else before your day ends.
Come on.
Okay, if you want to stay in, that is perfectly fine with me because we only have another few minutes here at the end. You know, it's funny because I've been trying to get you back here since I think the last time we had you on our stream.
Practice, wasn't it?
We were not even live yet. We were practicing, and I think something was happening in Portsmouth also to support children. There was something also to support children in Portsmouth. But yeah, man, you need to come on more often. You know, it'd be great. Bring great reports like this so we can tell the people and where they can get the resources. Did you say exactly where they can get the resources, or should they just look for this?
They'll have to reach out to the school in their division, in their district. I know that's interchangeable, but they'll have to reach out and find those resources. But I know Virginia Beach has an array of resources ready for families once they contact them. So that is definitely an option.
And like I said before, food banks, all those kind of things. There are other organizations too within the community. I'm just thinking off the top of my head that do support families who need it. I think of For Kids. I think of a few other things, organizations. So hopefully people can look into that as well. What we got here at the time, 11:46. All right, Sarah, let's just pull up at least a few of the boxes so we can let people know, again, if they're just now joining us, maybe you're on YouTube or you're watching us on our app, 13 News Now Plus. There are some big stories that are happening today, but maybe none bigger than what is taking place on the Senate floor right now. And this is the conversation we're expecting a vote today on two competing bills surrounding your health care. This is on whether or not we should extend the tax credits for the Affordable Care Act, those health care tax subsidies, or let them expire. Now, there are two different bills. One on the Democratic side would just go ahead and extend those subsidies for 3 years as they are. On the Republican side, they want to end those subsidies and just take the money that would be in those and put them in the health savings accounts for certain individuals who meet certain requirements under the ACA. So that is taking place. That's what you're seeing there on the top right on your screen. The bottom left there, we are watching and monitoring a live hearing right now in the House over Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. We've already seen her be questioned about some of the policies regarding immigration enforcement. This as we are getting breaking news in just within the last few minutes that a federal judge has ordered the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Salvadorian who was first detained back in March, then released, then re-detained, and currently being held in Pennsylvania. She is likely to be questioned about that by someone there in that committee as well. But the purpose of it is for what they're calling international threat. So that is happening live right now. So those are things we're expecting, hopefully, as we turn this stream over here to 13 News Now at noon, that maybe the next stream that starts from 1 to 3 with Connor Real and Nia Campbell, that they might be able to pick up for you and to monitor and watch live. Again, that vote expected some point today on the healthcare tax credits. We'll see what happens through that. A lot that we covered here this morning as we approach the afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and download our app, 13 News Now Plus. You can catch not only these shows live, but all of our content, our newscasts,